Megan stepped through the front door, her heart racing with excitement. After a week in the hospital, recovering from a minor surgery, all she wanted was to wrap her arms around her 2 children, Liam and Sophie, and feel the warmth of home again. But as she entered, an unsettling silence enveloped her. There were no sounds of laughter or playful banter echoing from the living room. Instead, the only noise was the hollow echo of her footsteps against the hardwood floor. "Where are the kids?" she called out, her voice tinged with worry. The absence of their usual energy made her stomach twist in knots. Sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, was her cousin Rachel, a smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, Megan, you're home earlier than expected. How are you feeling?" Rachel's tone was overly casual, as if she owned the place. Megan's heart sank. "Where are my children?" she demanded, her voice rising with anxiety. "They're safe and sound at Greenwood Academy," Rachel replied, waving her hand dismissively. "It's the best boarding school in the state. Someone had to step up while you were indisposed." The way she emphasized the last word made it sound like Megan's surgery had been a mere inconvenience to her. Megan felt the room start to spin. "Boarding school? What are you talking about?" Rachel stood up, smoothing her designer dress. "The local schools here are inadequate. Greenwood will give them the advantages they deserve." Megan's hands shook as she grabbed her phone, dialing her husband David's number. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice calm and collected. "Hey, Megan, I was going to explain everything when you got home." "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "You agreed to send our children away without even consulting me?" "Rachel found this amazing opportunity," David said, his tone maddeningly calm. "It's for the best, Megan." "Best for whom?" she spat, tears streaming down her face. "How far away is this school? When can I see them?" Rachel's smile turned predatory. "Greenwood has a strict adjustment period, no parental contact for the first month. It helps them settle in." Megan felt her heart drop. A month? They expected her to go a month without seeing her babies? "Get out," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel feigned shock, her eyes widening in mock offense. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house," Megan said, her voice stronger now. Rachel gathered her designer purse, shaking her head as if Megan was being unreasonable. "I'll give you time to process this. You'll thank me later, Megan. You always do." As soon as Rachel left, Megan collapsed onto the couch, still clutching her phone. David was saying something, but she couldn't focus on his words. Her eyes landed on a family photo on the wall, taken just a few months ago during Liam's birthday. The memory of their laughter felt like a distant dream. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Emily. "Heard you're home. Want me to bring dinner over?" Megan typed back quickly. "Come now, please, emergency." 20 minutes later, Emily arrived, finding Megan still on the couch, surrounded by printouts of Greenwood Academy's website. "They took my kids," Megan said, her voice hollow. "Rachel convinced David to send them away while I was under anesthesia." Emily's face darkened. "That snake. She's been trying to control your family for years, but this is a new low." Megan looked up at her friend, something shifting inside her. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, clear anger. "She thinks I'm too weak to fight back." "Are you?" Emily asked gently. Megan picked up the Greenwood Academy brochure, noticing for the first time the list of board members and investors at the back. A familiar name caught her eye, and suddenly she remembered something important. Something Rachel didn't know about. "No," she said, a plan already forming in her mind. "I'm not weak at all. And Rachel just made the biggest mistake of her life." Megan's mind raced as she recalled the investment documents her grandmother had left her. She had never paid much attention to them, thinking they were just a part of her family's estate. But now they felt like a lifeline. "I own 15% of Greenwood Academy," she said, her voice steadying with newfound determination. And 12% of their sister school, Maplewood Prep. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. What? Does Rachel know about this? No, Megan replied, shaking her head. The investments are under my maiden name. She has no idea. Megan took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through her veins. But that's not all. Look at this. She pulled out her laptop and opened an email she had received from the school's financial director just minutes ago. There's a major stakeholder meeting next week about policy changes and budget approvals. Perfect timing, Emily said, her excitement palpable, but then she hesitated. But Megan, are you sure you're strong enough for this? You just had surgery. I'm stronger than Rachel thinks, Megan replied, standing up despite the slight pull of her stitches. Besides, I have more motivation than she could ever imagine. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from David. She had been avoiding his calls since yesterday, but now she knew she had to confront him. You should talk to him, Emily advised. He needs to understand what his sister really is. Megan answered the phone, putting it on speaker. Yes, David? Megan, please, can we talk about this? His voice cracked slightly, filled with guilt. I'm coming home early, she said firmly. There's something you need to see. 30 minutes later, David walked in, looking tired and guilty. Before he could speak, Megan handed him a stack of papers. What's this? He asked, confusion etched on his face. Bank statements, family trust documents, emails, she said, watching his expression change as he started reading. Your sister has been systematically isolating and manipulating this family for years. David's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Remember when she convinced you to miss Liam's soccer game for that emergency business meeting? There was no meeting, Megan said, her voice rising. And when she told us Sophie's teacher had concerns about her behavior? I called the teacher yesterday. She never said anything of the sort. David sank into a chair, disbelief washing over him. That doesn't mean... Keep reading, Emily interrupted, her voice firm. Show him the trust fund papers, Megan. Megan pulled out the relevant documents. She's been siphoning money from the children's trust funds to pay for this boarding school. Funds that, by the way, she shouldn't even have access to. That's impossible, David protested, but his voice wavered. Rachel would never... The doorbell rang and Emily peeked through the window. Speak of the devil, she groaned. Rachel breezed in without waiting for an invitation, her usual confident demeanor faltering when she saw the three of them gathered around the papers. What's going on? She asked, her tone shifting to one of feigned innocence. Just reviewing some interesting financial documents, Megan said coolly. Care to explain why your signature is on my children's trust fund withdrawals? Rachel's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. As their aunt and a financial advisor, I'm simply managing their assets responsibly. Managing or stealing, Emily muttered under her breath. Excuse me? Rachel snapped, her voice rising. Knock it off, Rachel, David said, his voice strained. When was the last time you checked your own accounts? Really checked them? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Rachel's face, but she quickly masked it with bravado. You're just upset because you're not in control right now, she said smoothly. The medication must be making you paranoid. Don't you dare pretend to care about my health, Megan spat, her anger boiling over. You waited until I was literally on an operating table to steal my children. Rachel's facade cracked for the first time. You're just being dramatic, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Megan stood tall, despite the pain in her abdomen. You made one crucial mistake, Rachel. You sent my children to Greenwood Academy without checking who owns it. She pulled out her investment portfolio, spreading the documents across the table. Would you like to know who has the power to change school policies? including their ridiculous no-contact rule for the first month? Rachel's face paled as she snatched the papers from Megan's hands, her confidence evaporating. "This is," she stammered, her voice trailing off. "Just the beginning," Megan finished for her. "Now, would you like to tell everyone what you've really been up to, or should I?" Megan watched as Rachel's composure crumbled, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. "You don't understand," Rachel finally said, her voice trembling. "I was trying to help the children. They needed structure and guidance. By sending them away without my consent?" Megan shot back, her voice steady. "You think that's helping?" Rachel opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. Instead, she looked at David, her expression pleading. "You can't let her do this, David. She's just upset because she's not in control." David's face was a mixture of confusion and anger. "Rachel, you've crossed a line. You can't just take my kids away like that." Megan felt a surge of hope as she saw David's resolve beginning to shift. "I'm going to the school tomorrow," she declared, her voice firm. "I'll confront the board and demand answers. I won't let you manipulate my family any longer." Rachel's eyes widened in panic. "You can't do that. You don't know what you're getting into." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm getting into," Megan replied, her determination unwavering. "And I'm not backing down." As Rachel stormed out, Megan felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. She turned to David, who was still processing everything. "We need to work together on this," she said softly. "I can't do it alone." David nodded, his expression serious. "You're right. I should have listened to you from the start. I'll support you, whatever it takes." The next morning, Megan and Emily arrived at Greenwood Academy, their hearts pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. The school's imposing facade loomed before them, a stark reminder of the battle they were about to face. Inside, they were greeted by the headmistress, Mrs. Thompson, a stern-looking woman with a no-nonsense attitude. "What brings you here today?" she asked, her tone clipped. "I'm here to discuss the recent policy changes regarding parental contact and the separation of my children," Megan said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. Mrs. Thompson raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid those decisions were made by the board. You'll need to speak with them directly." Megan felt a surge of frustration but quickly composed herself. "I am a major stakeholder in this school. I have a right to know why these policies were implemented without proper approval." Mrs. Thompson's expression shifted slightly, but she remained guarded. "I assure you, everything was done according to protocol." "Protocol?" Emily interjected. "You mean the protocol that allows children to be separated from their parents without any explanation? That's not acceptable." Megan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation. "I want to see the documentation regarding these policy changes. I want to know who approved them and why." Mrs. Thompson hesitated, glancing at the door as if considering her options. "Very well, I'll arrange a meeting with the board for you, but I can't guarantee they'll be willing to discuss this." "Just set it up," Megan replied, her resolve hardening. "I'll be there." As they left the school, Emily turned to Megan, her eyes wide with admiration. "You were amazing in there. I can't believe how strong you are." Megan smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell within her. "I have to be, for my kids." That evening, Megan sat down with David to prepare for the upcoming board meeting. They reviewed the investment documents, highlighting the discrepancies and questionable practices that Rachel had been involved in. "I can't believe she would go this far," David said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I thought she was just being overbearing, but this is manipulation at its worst." Megan nodded, her expression serious. "We need to make sure the board understands the full extent of what's happening. If we can expose Rachel's actions, we can protect our children." As the day of the board meeting approached, Megan felt a mix of anxiety and determination. She knew that this was her chance to reclaim her family and put an end to Rachel's manipulation once and for all. The day of the board meeting arrived, and Megan felt a whirlwind of emotions as she and David entered the conference room at Greenwood Academy. The long mahogany table was surrounded by board members, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism as they glanced at the documents Megan had prepared. Mrs. Thompson called the meeting to order, her voice authoritative. "Thank you all for coming. We have a special guest today, Megan Bennett, who wishes to address some concerns regarding recent policy changes." Megan stood up, her heart racing, but she took a deep breath to steady herself. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I appreciate the opportunity to speak." She glanced around the room, making eye contact with several board members. "I'm here today because I believe my children, Liam and Sophie, have been wrongfully separated from me and sent to this school without my consent." A murmur rippled through the room, and Megan pressed on. "I recently discovered that my cousin Rachel has been manipulating our family dynamics for her own gain. She convinced my husband to send our children away while I was recovering from surgery, claiming it was for their best interest." Rachel, who had been sitting quietly in the back, suddenly stood up, her face flushed with anger. "That's not true. I was only trying to help. You're just upset because you're not in control." Megan felt a surge of confidence. "Control? Rachel, you've been controlling this family for years. You've isolated us, manipulated our decisions, and now you've taken my children away from me? I have evidence to prove it." She pulled out the stack of documents she had prepared, including bank statements and trust fund records. "These documents show that you've been siphoning money from my children's trust funds to pay for their education here. Funds that you shouldn't even have access to." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. "Is this true, Rachel?" one of them asked, his voice low. Rachel's bravado faltered. I was just managing their assets. I was doing what was best for them." Megan shook her head, her voice steady. "No, you were doing what was best for you. You've forged signatures, manipulated documents, and created a false narrative to take control of my family. This isn't about the children. It's about your need for power." Mrs. Thompson interjected, her tone serious. "If these allegations are true, we will need to investigate immediately. This is a serious breach of trust." Megan felt a wave of relief wash over her. "I want my children back. I want to know why they were sent here without my consent and why I was kept in the dark about all of this." The board members nodded, their expressions grave. "We will take this matter seriously, Megan. We will review the policies and your claims regarding Rachel's actions." As the meeting concluded, Megan felt a sense of victory. She had stood up for her family and exposed Rachel's manipulation, but she knew this was just the beginning. Later that evening, as Megan and David sat together, she felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "I can't believe we did it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "But we still have a long way to go." David nodded, his expression serious. "We need to prepare for the next steps. Rachel won't go down without a fight." Megan agreed, her determination unwavering. "I'm ready for whatever comes next. I won't let her take my children away from me again." The following week, Megan received a call from Mrs. Thompson informing her that the board had decided to hold a special meeting to address the allegations against Rachel. "We want to ensure that all parties involved are heard," Mrs. Thompson said. "We'll also be discussing the future of the policies regarding parental contact." Megan felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was her chance to not only reclaim her children, but also to expose Rachel's deceitful actions to a wider audience. She spent the next few days preparing, gathering all the evidence she could find, and consulting with a lawyer about her rights as a parent and stakeholder. On the day of the meeting, Megan arrived at the school with David and Emily by her side. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the murmurs of concerned parents and board members. As they entered the conference room, Megan's heart raced. She spotted Rachel sitting at the far end, her expression a mix of defiance and fear. Mrs. Thompson called the meeting to order, and Megan took a deep breath, ready to present her case. "Thank you all for gathering here today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the serious issues surrounding my children's education and well-being." She began by outlining the timeline of events, detailing how Rachel had manipulated David into sending Liam and Sophie away without her knowledge. "I have evidence that Rachel has been siphoning money from my children's trust funds to pay for their education here," Megan stated, her voice steady. "She has forged signatures and created false documents to support her actions." As she presented the evidence, the room fell silent. Board members flipped through the documents, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. Megan could see Rachel's facade cracking, her confidence waning as the truth began to unfold. "Rachel, how do you respond to these allegations?" Mrs. Thompson asked, turning to her. Rachel's voice trembled as she spoke. "I was just trying to help. The children needed a better education, and I thought I was doing what was best for them." Megan interjected, her voice firm. "You were doing what was best for you, Rachel. You've manipulated our family for years, and now you're trying to play the victim." The tension in the room was palpable as Rachel's composure crumbled. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Megan pressed on, determined to expose the truth. "You've isolated my family, taken my children away, and now you're trying to cover it up. This isn't about helping anyone, it's about control." As the meeting continued, more parents began to speak up, sharing their own experiences with Rachel's manipulation. One mother stood up, tears in her eyes. "She convinced me that I was unfit to care for my children. I trusted her completely, and now I see how wrong I was." Megan felt a surge of solidarity as other families joined in, sharing their stories of manipulation and deceit. The board members listened intently, their expressions grave as they realized the extent of Rachel's actions. Finally, Mrs. Thompson addressed the room. "Given the overwhelming evidence and the testimonies we've heard today, we will be conducting a full investigation into Rachel's actions. We take these matters very seriously." Megan felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was a significant step toward justice for her family and others affected by Rachel's manipulation. As the meeting concluded, Megan turned to David and Emily, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We did it. We stood up for our family." David nodded, his expression proud. "You were incredible, Megan. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." Megan smiled, feeling a sense of hope for the future. "It's not over yet, but we're one step closer to bringing our kids home." In the days following the board meeting, Megan felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The investigation into Rachel's actions was underway, but the uncertainty of what would happen next loomed over her like a dark cloud. She spent her days preparing for the possibility of a court case, gathering more evidence, and consulting with her attorney about her rights as a parent. One afternoon, as she was reviewing documents at home, her phone buzzed with a message from David. "Can we talk? I think we need to discuss our next steps." Megan's heart raced. She knew they needed to strategize, especially with Rachel still lurking in the background. They agreed to meet at a nearby cafe, and as she arrived, she found David already seated, looking pensive. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "What's on your mind?" David took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about Rachel and how she's going to react to all of this. She's not going to just back down." Megan nodded, her expression serious. "I know. She's already shown how manipulative she can be. We need to be prepared for anything." "I've also been talking to some of the other parents," David continued. "They're concerned about their own kids and what Rachel might do next. I think we should organize a meeting to discuss our options." Megan's eyes lit up with the idea. That's a great plan. If we can unite the parents, we can create a stronger front against Rachel. She won't be able to manipulate us if we're all on the same page." They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, discussing how to approach the other parents, and planning a community meeting. Megan felt a renewed sense of purpose as they outlined their strategy. Later that week, they held the meeting at a local community center. Parents filled the room, their faces a mix of concern and determination. Megan stood at the front, flanked by David and Emily, ready to share their experiences and rally support. "Thank you all for coming," Megan began, her voice steady. "We're here today because we all share a common goal: to protect our children from manipulation and deceit. Rachel has taken advantage of our trust, and it's time we stand together to put an end to it." As she spoke, parents nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute. One father stood up, his voice filled with anger. "I can't believe I let her convince me that I was unfit to care for my own child. We need to hold her accountable." Megan felt a surge of solidarity as more parents shared their stories, each one echoing the same themes of manipulation and betrayal. The room buzzed with energy as they discussed forming a coalition to support one another and to confront Rachel together. By the end of the meeting, they had established a plan to gather evidence, share resources, and support each other in their fight against Rachel. Megan felt a sense of hope as she looked around the room, realizing they were no longer alone in this battle. As the investigation progressed, the day of the court hearing approached. Megan felt a mix of nerves and determination as she prepared to face Rachel in front of a judge. She knew this was the moment that could change everything for her family. On the morning of the hearing, Megan arrived at the courthouse with David and Emily by her side. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the weight of anticipation. As they entered the courtroom, Megan spotted Rachel sitting at the defendant's table, her expression a mask of defiance. The judge entered and the proceedings began. Megan's attorney stood up first, presenting the evidence they had gathered against Rachel. "Your Honor, we have clear documentation showing that the defendant has manipulated financial records and forged signatures to gain control over the plaintiff's children and their trust funds." Megan felt her heart race as she listened to the arguments unfold. Rachel's attorney attempted to discredit Megan, claiming she was simply upset about losing control over her children. "This is a case of a mother trying to regain power after being sidelined," he argued. Megan's attorney countered. "This is not about control, it's about the well-being of the children. Rachel has taken advantage of a vulnerable situation, and we have the evidence to prove it." As the evidence was presented, Megan felt a surge of confidence. She watched as the judge examined the documents, his expression serious. Finally, it was time for Megan to take the stand. She felt a mix of fear and determination as she faced the judge in the courtroom. "Your Honor, I want to emphasize that this is about my children's well-being," she began, her voice steady. "They were taken from me without my consent, and Rachel has manipulated every aspect of our family dynamics. I want my children back, and I want Rachel held accountable for her actions." The judge listened intently, nodding as she spoke. Megan felt a sense of empowerment as she shared her story, detailing the pain and confusion her children had experienced due to Rachel's actions. After several hours of testimony, the judge called for a recess. Megan stepped out of the courtroom, her heart pounding. David and Emily were waiting for her, their expressions filled with support. "You did amazing, Megan," David said, pride evident in his voice. "I know this is hard, but you're fighting for your kids." Megan nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and hope. "I just want them back. I want to protect them from Rachel's manipulation." As they waited for the judge to return, Megan felt a sense of unity with the other parents who had come to support her. They were all in this together, fighting for their children's futures. After what felt like an eternity, the judge returned to the courtroom, his expression serious. The air was thick with tension as everyone took their seats, and Megan's heart raced in anticipation. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This have had a very too difficulty in considering the testimonies from both parties. I have reached a decision, the judge began, his voice steady. This case involves serious allegations of manipulation and financial misconduct that have affected the well-being of the children involved. Megan held her breath, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She glanced at David, who was watching the judge intently, his expression a mix of hope and anxiety. The court finds that the defendant, Rachel Bennett, has indeed acted inappropriately by taking control of the plaintiff's children and their trust funds without proper consent, the judge continued. The evidence of forged signatures and unauthorized withdrawals is compelling. Megan felt a surge of relief wash over her, but she knew they weren't finished yet. The judge paused, looking around the courtroom before continuing. As a result, I am ordering that the children be returned to their mother, Megan Bennett, effective immediately. Additionally, I am instructing the board of Greenwood Academy to review their policies regarding parental consent and oversight to prevent such situations from occurring in the future. A wave of emotion washed over Megan as she processed the judge's words. She felt tears welling in her eyes, a mix of joy and relief. David reached over, squeezing her hand tightly. You did it, Megan. You fought for them. Rachel's face fell, her defiance replaced by shock and despair. You can't do this, she shouted, her voice echoing in the courtroom. I was only trying to help. The judge's expression hardened. Your actions were not in the best interest of the children, Ms. Bennett. This court has made its decision. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the proceedings, Megan felt a rush of gratitude and hope. She had fought for her children and won, but she knew the journey wasn't over yet. There would be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them. The following day, Megan was finally able to bring Liam and Sophie home. As she drove to the school, her heart raced with anticipation. She could hardly believe that after everything they had been through, she was about to hold her children in her arms again. When she arrived at Greenwood Academy, she was greeted by Mrs. Thompson, who looked somber but supportive. I'm glad you're here, Megan. The children are waiting for you in the office. Megan nodded, her heart pounding as she made her way to the office. As she opened the door, she was met with the sight of Liam and Sophie sitting together, their expressions a mix of confusion and excitement. Mommy, Sophie exclaimed, jumping up and running into Megan's arms. We missed you so much. Megan knelt down, wrapping her arms around both children tightly. I missed you too, my loves. I'm so sorry for everything that happened. You're home now, and I promise I'll never let anyone take you away from me again. Liam looked up at her, his eyes wide. Are we really going home? For good? Yes, for good, Megan replied, her voice filled with emotion. We're going to be together, and I'm going to make sure you're safe. As they left the school, Megan felt a sense of joy and relief wash over her. She had fought hard for her family, and now they were finally reunited. That evening, they settled into their home, and Megan prepared a special dinner. As they sat around the table, she looked at her children, feeling a sense of gratitude for the love they shared. I'm so glad we're together again, she said, her voice filled with warmth. We're going to make new memories and be a happy family. Liam and Sophie smiled, their faces lighting up with joy. Can we have pizza? Liam asked, his eyes sparkling. Megan laughed, feeling a sense of normalcy returning. Of course. Pizza it is. As they enjoyed their dinner, Megan felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them head-on, surrounded by the love of her children. In the weeks that followed, Megan focused on rebuilding her family's life. She enrolled Liam and Sophie in new activities, ensuring they had a supportive environment where they could thrive. She also sought therapy for them to help process the emotional turmoil they had experienced. Megan kept in touch with the other parents who had supported her during the court case. They formed a community group to advocate for better policies at Greenwood Academy, ensuring that no other family would have to endure what they had gone through. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Megan looked at her children, feeling a sense of peace. "I want you both to know that you can always talk to me about anything," she said gently. "I'm here for you, no matter what." Sophie nodded, her expression serious. "We know, Mama. We're really happy to be home." Liam chimed in. "Yeah, and we love you." Megan smiled, her heart swelling with love. "I love you both so much. We're going to be okay." As they settled in for a movie night, Megan felt a sense of gratitude for the journey they had taken together. They had faced challenges, but they had emerged stronger as a family. Megan knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but with her children by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would create a new chapter filled with love, laughter, and resilience. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new routine for Megan, Liam, and Sophie. The scars of the past were still present, but they were healing together as a family. Megan had taken steps to ensure that her children felt safe and secure, and she was determined to create a nurturing environment for them. One sunny Saturday morning, Megan decided it was time for a family outing. "How about we go to the park today?" she suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We can have a picnic and play some games." Liam and Sophie cheered, their faces lighting up with joy. "Yes, can we bring our kites?" Sophie asked eagerly. "Absolutely. Let's pack a picnic and make it a fun day," Megan replied, feeling a sense of happiness wash over her. As they arrived at the park, the sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with laughter and the sounds of children playing. Megan spread out a blanket under a large oak tree, and they settled down to enjoy their picnic. They shared sandwiches, fruit, and cookies, laughing and talking about their favorite things. After lunch, they flew their kites, the colorful fabric dancing in the wind. Megan watched as Liam and Sophie ran across the field, their laughter echoing in the air. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the simple joys of life. Later, as they sat on the blanket, Megan turned to her children. "I want you both to know how proud I am of you," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "You've shown so much strength and resilience through everything we've been through." Liam looked up at her, his expression serious. "We're just happy to be with you, Mama. We love you." Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, and we're a team." Megan smiled, her heart swelling with love. "Yes, we are, and together we can face anything." As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park, Megan felt a sense of peace settle over her. They had come through the storm, and now they were ready to embrace the future. In the following weeks, Megan continued to advocate for better policies at Greenwood Academy, working closely with the community group she had formed with other parents. They organized meetings with the school board, pushing for transparency and accountability to ensure that no other family would have to endure what they had experienced. Megan also focused on her own personal growth. She enrolled in a local support group for parents, where she found comfort in sharing her experiences and learning from others. It was a space where she could express her feelings and gain strength from the stories of resilience around her. One evening, as she sat with David discussing their plans for the future, he looked at her with admiration. "You've really turned things around, Megan. I'm so proud of how you've handled everything." Megan smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "I couldn't have done it without your support. We're a team, and I'm grateful for that." As they talked, Megan felt a renewed sense of hope for what lay ahead. She envisioned a future filled with love, laughter, and the strength of family bonds. As the school year came to a close, Megan organized a small celebration for Liam and Sophie to honor their achievements and resilience. She invited their friends and families, creating a joyful atmosphere filled with laughter and love. During the celebration, Megan took a moment to address the guests. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate our children. They have shown incredible strength and courage, and I am so proud of them. This past year has taught us all the importance of family, love, and support. Liam and Sophie beamed with pride as their friends cheered. The day was filled with games, laughter, and heartfelt moments, reminding everyone of the power of community and connection. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Megan felt a sense of fulfillment. They had overcome so much, and now they were ready to embrace the future together. In the months that followed, Megan continued to nurture her family's bond, creating new traditions and memories. They explored new hobbies, traveled to nearby places, and spent quality time together, strengthening their connection. Megan knew that challenges would still arise, but she felt equipped to handle them. With her children by her side and a supportive community around her, she was ready to face whatever life had in store. As the years passed, Megan watched Liam and Sophie grow into confident, compassionate individuals. They thrived in school, made lasting friendships, and developed a strong sense of self. Megan's heart swelled with pride as she reflected on their journey together. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Megan looked at her children, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. I want you both to know how much I love you and how proud I am of the amazing people you've become. Liam smiled, his eyes shining. We love you too, Mama. You're the best. Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, thanks for always being there for us. Megan felt a warmth spread through her heart. They had faced adversity together, and now they were stronger than ever. As they shared stories and laughter, she knew that their bond would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. With a heart full of hope and love, Megan embraced the future, ready to create new memories and cherish the moments that truly mattered. Together, they were a family united, and nothing could ever change that.